You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, the weekly podcast for small town people with big dreams and ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week we'll cover a topic meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you to live big in your small town. Although it has its challenges, nothing beats small town living, and we're committed to sharing the best of what's working in the communities we serve. So enjoy this episode, and we hope it helps you to bloom where you've been planted. My guest on today's episode is Tara Brandner. She is the founder of a nonprofit called Everlasting Hope, which seeks to support people that are working through or have suffered from infertility. She joins us on the chat to talk about how she came to start this nonprofit. She lives in a very rural place. She is also a nurse practitioner. The big takeaway with this discussion with Tara is just how possible it is for every single one of us to combine not only our professional experience, but our genuine passion that maybe has evolved and come to us through our own life experiences, but to combine all of that into really fulfilling a deep, meaningful purpose, no matter the size of your small town. Enjoy this chat with Tara Brandner. All right, welcome, Tara, to the Small Town Big Talk Show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to visit with you. So, as you know, these are always just natural, organic conversations. And today we're talking about something that I didn't personally struggle with. On the outside of this topic or this, it's not a lifestyle, but it does become something it does, right? It becomes something that becomes all consuming, right? And so my mom and I have talked about it. So we're talking about infertility. Like, I'll let everybody in on the topic. We didn't struggle to conceive our children. I never miscarried a child. There's a lot of sadness and trauma and difficulty that accompanies those experiences, and it's something I've never dealt with. So I'm very excited to have you on because I think it's not something I've touched on in the show ever before because I lack the personal connection to it. But obviously I have lots of friends, know many people that do struggle. And so I'm seriously so excited to welcome you to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, and Then we'll get into the topic of why infertility has become something that's so close to your heart that you actually started a nonprofit to address it. So welcome. Tell us all about yourself.
So I live in Ashley, North Dakota. So rural town. It's actually my hometown. Did I think I would return to Ashley when I graduated high school? No, I did not. However, life took me into the medical field. I became a nurse and I followed shortly thereafter, and I became a doctorate nurse practitioner. And the opportunity presented to move back to rural North Dakota. And for many medical people, I'll give my shout out for rural healthcare. It's a wonderful place to work. And there's oftentimes loan repayment attached to it, which was one of the main selling points, I guess, that brought my family back here. So my story starts out, I guess, right there. Actually, I got married. I then went on and got my master's and doctorate degree and followed that with moving back to Ashley. And I find it funny because my whole perspective on rural town and what that presented changed significantly from senior year to when you actually have your bachelor's and master's degree. Things look different when you think about starting your family, which is exactly what we had thought about doing. And when I completed my master's degree, I had started my doctorate degree and the opportunity presented, and I did move back and start working here in Ashley. And it's been wonderful.
Can I stop you real quick and just ask, can you elaborate a little bit? What were some of the things, you kind of alluded to it, but the fact that when you're looking for a place to start your family, that's when our small towns really do start to look pretty darn appealing.
Absolutely.
But was there something else that you said your perspective kind of shifted? Did it have anything to do with professionally what you were doing and you were like envisioning what practicing in a rural community would look like? Or what were some of the things that shifted for you?
Yes. So when you're a nurse practitioner, depending where you work, when I say that state-wise, you do have some scope of practice restrictions. And North Dakota is a full scope of practice state, as is South Dakota. Neighboring state, I believe Minnesota has some restrictions still. So when I go to school, it's like, I want to work in my full scope. I don't want to be restricted by little mundane things that I have been trained and educated to do. So that was one thing that was super appealing. Ashley Medical Center allows full scope. They have no policies in place that also prevent that. So I was able to do ER, hospital rounds, nursing home rounds, clinic. I see newborns. I see 103-year-old, I think was the oldest I was able to see. So I was able to use my full education right here in Ashley, which I don't believe many get to do working in larger cities, whether it's even just patient population or scope of practice. That was super appealing. My husband is a teacher, and he was super impressed with the school systems. He worked in Ashley right away. He expanded his education and now works in Wishick as a phyed and health teacher. So he was super impressed at just everything about the educational system from a work standpoint, from a standardized testing standpoint, all of that. So that was what was really appealing to him. And safety, of course, that was number one. Being able to ride your bike. We thought really hard back to how we were raised. He was also raised in a rural area. However, he was super stuck that Bismarck was his hometown at that time. And so he had a little bit harder time transitioning than me back.
Sure. For the audience, because we have a lot of people actually that listen that are out of state, which is very exciting. How big is Ashley?
Like 750 people, probably.
Right. I mean, people just need to understand that when we're talking rural, we are talking a pretty small town.
Yes.
And for reference, Bismarck is the second largest community in the state of North Dakota. So much bigger, like what, 100,000? At least?
Yeah, at least, right? I'd say. Yeah. And at the time the time we moved was when the oil boom was starting too.
Sure. Yeah.
So we were like, bye. That was another thing too. The population and the flow and things of Bismarck were just changing too. And where we were living and all of that had just kind of taken a turn. I do have family in Ashley. So that was also, everyone doesn't have that. I think what I would like to get across about that, when you're starting to think about your family, is that people become family. Your neighbors become your family. Your coworkers become your family.
Yeah.
And so that was just awesome. And it happened so quickly. You will get your arms wrapped around somebody very quickly coming back to a small town or moving to a small town.
I just want to comment that I think I can't recall anybody else that we've had on this show that works in the medical field. I think you're the first one.
Wonderful.
I absolutely could be wrong, Tara, but in my recollection, I can't think of any. So what I want to point out about this is that rural healthcare, there's a lot of challenges facing rural healthcare.
Yes.
And I think you are highlighting something that nobody ever says. You're saying something out loud that people don't normally say. And that this idea of not having limits on your scope of practice, being able to use your full education. I really just want to reiterate that for our listeners because I think, like a lot of us, I would love to know what your aspirations were. When you left Ashley, you were like, I was never, you never thought you'd come back. We have these visions of grandeur, I think. A lot of us do. I wasn't in the medical field. I still thought that my big life was elsewhere for certain. And I think at some point it's like helping people realize and being thoughtful and mindful about how we talk about the return and how we talk about coming back, that there is rich, beautiful opportunity for success professionally, of course, personally too. But I think it's important to just reiterate that because I haven't ever heard anybody say it. And
and I use that in other ways. So I'm currently president of the North Dakota Nurse Practitioner Association.
Fantastic.
I've completed a month-long health policy fellowship in Washington, D.C. through the American Association of Nurse Practitioners. I feel like I could go on and on about that I haven't let. In fact, my healthcare facility supported me 105% when it came to me applying to these things, spreading my wings all the way from administration to the board to my coworkers. They wrapped their arms around the opportunity and they were like, you have to go. Like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. Wow. And I don't know if I can say that would happen in some other places. I just feel rural is very open. Whether you're a nurse, you're going to get to see as a CNA, you're going to float back and forth. You're going to get nursing home. We might need you to help in the ER on a busy day. We might need you to do it now with the ever-changing things currently going on in healthcare. You're going to get pulled and get to do some really fun things and be used in different ways. You might be helping with the ambulance, just different things I think that you get to do and use, and knowledge and skills that you will get to use in rural America healthcare that are not always used elsewhere.
I think that's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about infertility. When did this? And obviously, you can tell as much of your personal story if you want, Tara. But I'm sure you're pretty accustomed to talking about it. The fact that you ended up passionately pursuing this to the degree that you started the first nonprofit in the state of North Dakota that addresses infertility Tell us the story. How did that all come about? And where are you at today with it?
Yes, I have to laugh because I was quiet. I was so quiet about it. So I was working in my office at the time, consisted of 6 people, and we had went through a miscarriage. I'd say about 3 months. And that was naturally, what they say, if you're under the age of 35, you try for 1 year on your own, 35 and older, 6 months. And something just didn't feel right. We had almost hit that year. I had a miscarriage within that year. And as month after month went on, something didn't feel right. But I, for some reason, had it in my head, I'll follow this. I reached out to my OBGYN and she's like, get in here. Like, do not be sitting at home worried about this. Let's check you out.
Can I ask how old you were when you started trying?
I was, oh my goodness, this is a good question. See, I just had a birthday, so now I have to do the math. Let's see, 4, 3, 2, I was 27.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 27, had successfully completed all my, because in your head, you're like, I'm just going to get married because I'm going to do the right, in your head, quote unquote, right thing. That's just in my head. I'm going to get all of these degrees because I've never been one to do well with, like, even in high school, I didn't do well with being involved in 50 things. My grades struggled, vice versa. So I knew I had to get my degrees finished first. I had no reason to think that anything was wrong. It was mentioned before I was even married that I possibly had endometriosis. They had found it during a non-invasive procedure, but they had told me not to worry. So I didn't worry. I truly did not worry. Everything about me was completely normal. So we had this miscarriage, and that's when something kind of hit me that perhaps, maybe everything isn't, my medical head went crazy. This is where medicine and your own health and body get very tricky and complicated and woven into each other. And so after the miscarriage, they said, try again. And 2 months of trying, I reached out to my clinic. It was not the main OBGYN I had saw. And she said, well, you do know you live 2 hours away. So if you do want to pursue any infertility stuff or further testing, you have to drive here 2 times a month. Yep. I'm aware. I know where I live and that's okay. Like, I was just struck, I guess, that my location of living was altering their perception on what I should be moving forward with.
Ooh. Let's stop there for just a second. Because again, it is a good one. Yeah. Because again, this is one of the plight for people living in rural communities. And
absolutely.
The interesting part is it wasn't a deterrent for you as the patient, but it was perceived. It sounds as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as though the perception was on the part of the healthcare providers that it should be a barrier for you. Is that true?
That is absolutely what happened. And I was caught off guard. I was caught off guard to the point where she had even made a comment. Well, when you feel crazy enough, call me back and we'll talk. I was in counseling at that point over this. So I had sought counseling already early on after this miscarriage. If my patients and friends know me, they know I hand out counseling now like it's a punch card. I love it. I just wish more people would do it.
Like
it doesn't matter.
It's like, do you want fries with that? Only it's counseling.
I'm like,
amen, friend. Amen.
I went to counseling. I'm going to just share it. I have went over the most mundane things like I'm having this issue at work. Can I talk about it here? My husband wants me to sell our cabin. Can I please talk about, just anything, just go. But especially I had known early, I need to go to counseling for this. And so I had done that. And I was like, I'm already in counseling. And she's like, we'll talk it over with your husband about what you want to pursue next, call back. Fortunately, I'd called my OB and I had told her what this conversation taken place. She goes, call my office first thing Monday. You're coming in to see me. We're done. We're going on. We're stopping the buck here. You're just going to go see reproductive endocrinology.
Like we're skipping over that person?
Yes.
Because, so let's just reiterate. I actually wrote it down. So she said, when you feel crazy enough.
Yep. Crazy enough.
So when you said I'm in counseling, then was she like, oh, you're crazy enough? Or what? I mean, what was the implication? Like, what was she actually implying, do you think?
I think she was indicating when I felt that this month after month of not being able to conceive on my own truly affected me and my mental health to the point of where I can't go on any further. Please call me back and we'll discuss what the next step is. And I said, time out, I'm there. Yeah. I'm in counseling.
Right.
I have hit that point.
How offensive is it to describe it as being crazy enough? Yes. Like, come on. Like it doesn't make, of course it makes you maybe feel crazy, but it's not actual craziness.
Everything.
That's the word crazy is such an insulting, insulting frame to put around something as heartbreaking as infertility.
Absolutely. And I was like, I'm half thankful you said this to me as a medical provider, but I truly, and that is when I had personally known my OB and I reached out to her, and she is amazing and was like, no. Like, this is not acceptable. And she hadn't been made aware of everything that had gone on during those months and the phone calls I had made. Sure. And so she was just like, we're done here, honey. Like, it's time to go on. Let's just get you in with reproductive. You're ready for that. Let's do it with them. Let's not mess around at our clinic any further, and let's go on to the next steps. And I think that whole situation has made me a better healthcare provider. I am super sensitive to when I hear from people, friends, people reaching out to me, what stages or step they're in or they've done. I'm able to provide them with a little more guidance when it's time to maybe move on, when to seek a second opinion, just things like that of triggers. Like, if you are triggered, you're done. Time to go to the next. Not everybody is the same when it comes to treating miscarriage or infertility. They just haven't been through it, that's just not their thing. And so I think there's professionals who are trained in this, and we need to go to them and seek them. And you don't need referrals to go to them. Lo and behold, I found out later on. So
okay, so can I pause you there again too? Thinking about the person that is not a healthcare professional, it sounds as though you're almost giving a few bits of advice is like, what can a person do to advocate better for themselves? First of all, it sounds as though, just saying that out loud, that you do not need a referral to see these people. If that were said to me as a non-healthcare professional, and they said, when you feel crazy enough, if you could give that person advice based on what you experience, what would you say to them?
Yep.
What are some things they should do?
I'm a huge intuition person. So if something doesn't feel right in your gut, like you just think something isn't right, this isn't wrong, it's time. I don't care if you've hit the 6-month point at your age or the 1 year. And if you have an underlying issue, like you have abnormal cycles, you have something wrong, you have other symptoms displaying that this may be a challenge, please seek care sooner than later. I think a lot of people are so fixed on that 1 year. That is a standard. That is a standard, number, a standard thing to follow. They'll tell you that's what their job is to diagnose and assess and figure out, okay, yep, you're safe, you're clear to go on. So for reproductive health, you can call and you don't need a referral to see them. Although I do, it's nice to start if you are comfortable with your family practice provider or your OBGYN.
Right.
It is always a great first stop. If you've made that stop and you still just feel like, I don't know if I felt like that was everything I need to hear, just go and get that second opinion and see what they have to say. I just feel like my intuition was a huge guide and factor in this, and my gut feelings came through and I followed them. That really kind of helped guide me to my next steps of everything, and it led to what I knew was right and happening was not normal.
Right. So then what happened?
So we started at Sanford Reproductive Health in Fargo, and we determined based on everything that starting IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, will be the next best step for us. And so long story short in regards to what that is they will time your cycle, and then they do collect a sample from your partner and they time it and they inject it at this very particular moment in your cycle, and you sit and wait for 2 weeks. It sounds like so easy and wonderful, but like you're putting hormones into your system. So it's always interesting the side effects that can occur and do occur from that.
Sure.
We ended up doing 3 rounds. And I always say I should write a book about my 3rd round because the shot that you give to release your egg, I'll try to like dodge all of that juiciness, but like it's so timed that I was in a tornado cellar with the sirens going off, that a tornado was going on here in Ashley. And I was like, I'm taking this shot with. Chuck's like, just leave it. And I'm like, no. Oh, no. The shot's coming with. So I gave my trigger shot to myself in our storm cellar with a siren going off.
That is crazy. What a crazy story. See, that's the appropriate word use of the word crazy. Like that's a totally crazy story. Oh my goodness.
Exactly. And then, So at the time, we were short-staffed for providers, and we had a locum here who was amazing. And, everything's so timed, so last minute. You don't know, like, you kind of know within a week's time frame or two, but oftentimes it's like, nope, you have like a week. Well, my other coworker was on vacation, and I had this older gentleman locum who was amazing. And I was like, and I was not open. I was not even open at this point. I'm like, is there any way you can stay an extra day? I have to be out of town. Like, I have this medical issue. And he's like, yep, fine. That's okay. I'll stay. So I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Because had he not been able to stay, that would have been, like a whole wasted cycle per se. And that's about $1,500 for one round out of pocket.
Right. So
and
at
that
this
was
point,
our third.
None of your coworkers, nobody knew that you were.
No, until the third round. And guess what? My secretary was going through this at the same time. So office of 6 people. And here's me and my secretary going through it at the same time. And so once I opened up to her, because her and I were tiptoeing around our office, like, I have this appointment I have to be at.
Why? Like, can I ask why?
Why? Great question.
I mean, because clearly you're very open. I feel like you appear to be a very open person.
I'm super open now. I'm a book now. Yeah.
Right.
I think I had it engraved into me. No, I don't think. I know I had it engraved in me that we don't talk about this. We don't talk about this disease. It involves reproductive systems. It involves sex. We don't talk about it. That's just something that we do not talk about. And I think there was a little bit of, like I said, stigma, even within my own facility, that I was going to be gone a lot. I was going to be not in the office. What does this mean? So when I did open up, there was that came with it. Like, well, how are we going to, we were so short staffed at the time. Like, how are we going to do this with you being gone? You don't know when you're going to be gone. And so I said, you know what? Figure it out. Like, this is when I'm going to be gone. This is my priority. This is my medical diagnosis. You cannot discriminate. It's actually illegal to discriminate against me and infertility.
Right.
So let's not even go there. And once I kind of said that, I'd done some education, like, you do realize, like, this is how common it is. So it was 1 in 8. And do you realize in our clinic, that's me and this other individual? And actually, new science shows it's 1 in 6. That is how common it is now.
That's why I feel it's sad. And I'm just going to say this, which it's going to sound, I don't know what it's going to sound like. It just is what it is. But when you've never experienced it, you almost can't actually appreciate fully.
Yep, you are correct.
I got pregnant 3 times and had 3 healthy pregnancies and 3 healthy children, right? So It's almost like you really can't even imagine. Because you haven't been through it. And of course, I have a lot of empathy, of course. It's really something that you have to, like with a lot of things, I think. We can care for people and love people that have been through it, but it's something that you don't know. I mean, like losing a child or all sorts of things, right? And so I do think it's sad to me when I hear you talking about this, that even as a medical professional,
I know, yes,
you felt isolated because of it. And it was self-isolating. Right?
It was self-isolating. I don't know. And I was trying to think about this at one point in time, like, where did this get portrayed upon me? And I don't know. I don't know where it came from, other than I had pressure to be at work. I can appreciate. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, that if I wasn't there, it would crumble. And it does involve doctor's appointments. And when you live in rural America, there's travel and expense attached to infertility. That's not what somebody in a bigger city would have necessarily. They can quickly leave their office and go to this appointment and return. Thankfully, Sanford does have telehealth. And so I was able to do some of my stuff in Jamestown, some of it in Bismarck, some of it in Fargo.
That's still a lot of driving.
That's
a lot of driving.
Yeah. So I put on 1,200 miles in 1 week when we actually, and I'll get to this later, when we did IVF, but in regards to driving, I had 1,200 miles in 1 week on. That is like the extent that it can get. I don't want that to discourage people from seeking treatment, but, rural health does present another barrier when it comes to infertility as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so you get through your 3rd cycle.
Yes.
Of IUI, right?
IUI, yes,
Right.
and all 3 have failed. The tornado shelter child did not happen. That's what the doctor had said that day. Oh, we're going to have a tornado baby. And I was like, okay. And I had just been so discouraged from everything kind of just leading up to it. And there was issues with obtaining my medication. I ended up driving to Jamestown. They didn't have it, drove home, had to overnight it. There was issues with obtaining my medication for that. There was a tornado shelter injection. There was not knowing if I could even leave work for my procedure. And so I had honestly just been like, I'm done. And my husband too. And we inserted some F-bombs because we were F-bombers and we were done. We had hit a wall and we were just like, I need a break.
And this was how many years of then trying?
That was 3 months of treatment and we were burnt. We were exhausted. It was the negative pregnancy test. It was the driving. It was the work. It was everything. It was everything all in one and not having a good support system in regards to those who were going through it. I had reached out to social media on Instagram and Facebook to try to find groups because there was nobody but my secretaries. We had each other, but we felt very isolated. We had no support groups, no one in the state that we knew of. I had some friends that had been through it in the past, but that were currently going through it at that time, the exact step as me. There was one other. And so it was a lot. Fortunately, that was a month later was when I went to DC for a month to complete my health policy fellowship. So that was an amazing timing of everything. And something I like to share about intuition and timing and all of that is the day that I was actually having my miscarriage, I received my acceptance letter for this fellowship. My due date for this baby was when I was in DC completing the fellowship. So I found it like, I'm one of them like, okay, that's interesting timing. That doesn't make it necessarily better, but it's like a sign or something. I don't know. At the time, I didn't realize it till later on, the timing of everything. So I go and complete my health policy fellowship. It was for the American Association of Nurse Practitioners. I was working on breaking down federal barriers that are in place for nurse practitioners that are still in place. I was just in DC last week and we are still fighting for those. But it was a wonderful experience. Little did I know how it would then fast forward into things kind of coming down the road for infertility. But I had returned from that. We started the next step of IVF and we started that. And about, I'm trying to think of the time frame, 6 months later, we did our within that time, it's a lengthy process. And once again, there was traveling and all that attached to it. But we ended up pursuing IVF. And in January of 2018, our son Hayden was born. And so he is our little miracle baby. I think every baby's a miracle. He's just like super special miracle baby.
Right.
So, and through that process, he was our only remaining. We had 2 embryos that came out of that. And we decided with our doctor at the time, it was best to transfer both. And only he was born from that. So once again, there's another loss. It was invisible loss, but there's a loss of that that goes along with failed transfers. We had a cycle canceled in the midst of all of that. So that was thousands of dollars lost, in the midst of all of that. And when I was home on maternity leave with him is kind of when it hit me, like, whoa, like what have we been through financially, physically, mentally, all of it. And I got like this overwhelming sense of like multiple emotions. But I really started to think about others that are still going through this, those that are going to have to go through this. And I had reached out to Resolve, which is a national infertility organization, because they were doing a lot of work at that time in states in regards to making insurance mandatory. So back up, hello, insurance covers none of this. This is not covered by insurance. Once you get the diagnosis of infertility, your insurance coverage stops. And it is expensive. It is, yes. So my overall diagnosis became this endometriosis, and I did extra treatment in the midst of all of this for my endometriosis. And so I just felt, okay, well, I have this diagnosis of endometriosis, which is shown to cause infertility, and none of this is covered. And so I had started to work with Resolve, and I was like, what do I got to do? Like, I have some health policy knowledge now. And at that time, I was also working with the North Dakota Nurse Practitioner Association legislation and different efforts that we were doing at the state level. So I had some more little background in regards to legislation. And she's like, oh, okay, well, you're going to have to find a sponsor and you're going to have to do this. And it's already October. Your session starts in January. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen this year. And I was like, no. It's happening this year. Like, this is going to happen. And so I started at ground zero, I call it, because like I had all this knowledge, but I became a constituent at that time. I did not wear any other hat. I was not a nurse practitioner. I was not a health policy fellow. I was a constituent in District 21 in McIntosh County.
For this organization?
No, like I was just your plain Jane citizen that had a problem.
I wanted to clarify that because what I feel like I'm hearing you say is that there's this organization called Resolve that was in place. You go to them to try to become a part of it, and due to timing, basically the timing of their process didn't align with your need to do something about it. Is that accurate?
They were like, good luck, because this is going to take a lot of time. And
so when you say you became a constituent, you became like the advocate, the person to say something's got to change.
Yes.
That's amazing, Tara. Seriously.
Thank you. I was like powered. I was just like, no. Like I had just spent, and I share this pretty openly, we did have an older insurance healthcare plan, fortunately, at the hospital at the time that covered $20,000 lifetime, which is honestly, like, it sounds like a lot. It's not. It's peanuts.
No, right.
Because we had spent 35,000+, and that's average. I have multiple people that have spent $50,000 to $90,000 and have 0 to 1 child after that.
When you were talking about all the things that you felt like you lost.
Yes.
Money being one of them. If you lose a potentially like the hope of a viable embryo, right? And that's why all of a sudden I was listening to you talking and I was like, it would just be hope that dwindles every single month, the hope of what's to come. That is something that the emotions of that, the effect on your spirit and your soul and your heart, and just to keep going has got to be really difficult. Yes. And that's probably why your nonprofit is so aptly named. Why don't we talk about that? Because that's what came out of this, right? Was you decided to actually start a new nonprofit.
We did. Yes. Yeah. Our bill failed, but we had like this huge social media following because I had just made a Facebook page to kind of just keep in touch and try to get testimonials. And when I say it failed, it's like, it failed from a paper standpoint, but there was so much awareness that was raised and these patients had come flooding forward, wanting to share and their stories. And I was just even more like, I knew there was a lot out there, but I didn't realize the staggering numbers and situations that were occurring right here in North Dakota. So that was in February. And in July, we did an awareness walk through Resolve. So that's once again the national organization is Resolve. And they have this program called Do It Yourself, DIY Walk. And we had put that together at the state capitol. And there was like an amazing turnout. And I was like, okay, but we had realized like, people want to give, but they kind of want to give and keep it local within the state. Sure. And I was like, well, I've kind of been thinking like, there needs to be more support. Once again, going back to, I was isolated and had my coworker, and I was going to Instagram and talking to people in Florida and Georgia, which was amazing, but it wasn't local. And so I had realized all the number of ways that there was a lack of resources within our state. And I don't know, it was only like 8 months ago, I think now, that we started and formed Everlasting Hope in July. But like, I had all these wonderful people coming forward with different skills and traits that helped me get this nonprofit off the ground. And so we officially are a 501c3 here in North Dakota. We are the only one in the state of North Dakota. And our mission is to just create public awareness that infertility is a treatable medical condition. We work at providing resources for families, whether it's support, education, events, fundraisers. And all of our fundraisers go back to a grant program that we actually are about to open up here soon. But we have a grant program that patients can apply to for some financial assistance to help offset the cost of treatment.
That's incredible. How much money are you guys granting out this year? If you can share that, if that's public.
Yeah, I can share that. Yep. So we have raised about $5,000 that we're going to be giving away. We are going to, like I said, we're going to open applications up soon. We're probably going to end up splitting that. I don't know. It'll just depend on the applicants, but we have I like to call it very strict, but so there's about 30-ish other, not even 30, I think. Well, I'll just say approximately 30 other organizations in the entire country like this. There are not many. And I worked really closely with them when developing our nonprofit to ensure like what worked, what didn't work, what would you do over, that kind of thing. And so we worked with them along with the Stanford Reproductive Health physicians there to create this application to ensure that it was following kind of what's been going on. We're giving away thousands of dollars, so we wanted to make sure that we're doing it in the right way.
Yeah.
And so, we are excited to open that program up and keep our efforts moving forward for fundraising for that. We will be back in 2021 with another bill with legislation.
I cannot stress enough how amazing it is. Well, there's a number of things I'm seeing with this story that I'd like to kind of bring to light because you're very close to it, obviously. Hearing kind of the whole arc of your story for the first time, you are such a shining example of somebody that's using your professional background, your professional experiences. The fact that you know how to write a bill is such a gift to a nonprofit. And and again, at the same time, you could have said, well, I'm just going to work within the rules of the things that are already in existence. And instead you went, nope, there's big gaps, either big gaps or a ton of tiny gaps, however it looked to you. You just said there's a gap to fill and I want to fill it. What I always hope this show can be for people is just an inspiration to know that if you feel that way about something that you feel like you weren't served, you are going through something that every single one of us has the capacity to do this.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's using your own individual skills, right? But you were set up so beautifully to tackle this. And I don't want to say like it may be why you were the person that went through it, but I do believe that happens. I don't really believe in coincidence, so I think our struggles sometimes turn into our way to contribute in a bigger, broader way. So
you nailed it. I think the only thing that you need to do any of that, whether it's a nonprofit or bringing something forward to your legislators, is passion, your story. Amen. They want to hear your story. It doesn't matter what state I've talked to. They don't care about your lobbyists as much as they hear your story, your why this is an issue for us in your state district, whatever it may be. Like they want to hear from you. It means more to them and it carries more power than anything.
Right. Tara, this is such a great story. And I think, again, as somebody that didn't suffer from this, I can tell you, whenever I had a friend that was struggling with infertility, I'm going to tell you, like, as a person that had really healthy children, it almost creates this weird feeling like I shouldn't ever complain about my crappy kids and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yes.
Or if you're pregnant and you're super uncomfortable, you get this weird, like, oh, I don't want to say anything. Can you speak a little to that, to kind of the people that never struggle with it? Like, I think sensitivity, not training, but being sensitive is super important. But also, like, do we have to be that sensitive? You know what I mean? Like, so sensitive that, so I would love for you to kind of bridge that for us. Cause I think it's something that, it's a family. Like, if you love people that are going through it, you don't want to hurt them.
Correct. And say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so it's alarming. Like 61% of people do not tell their family, let alone friends, that they are going through this. 61%. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so how are you going to know who we are, I guess, other than you can ask. There was a wonderful article that was put out and it was called Band-Aid Statements and the stigma that kind of goes along with that. So we hear it a lot. Just adopt. Relax, you'll get pregnant. You can have my kids. Are you sure you want kids? Kids are expensive. It's all in God's timing. Or have you tried this? What about this? Well, this worked for my one friend. Has this worked for you? I guess I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say dodge all of the advice. Like, do not give us tips or recommendations or what worked. Trust us. We have seen those. We have tried those. We've done them all. Like, you name it. If it's out there, we have done it and tried it. We have done everything we possibly can prior to seeking medical advice often. And so when you say you'll get pregnant, don't worry so much. We don't know that. That's not what's going on in our minds. We are struggling daily. It is a huge mental health thing that I think is lacking. This is the 4th leading cause of trauma for women. And it's actually been shown to be comparable to losing a parent. And it's because month after month, you're going through a loss. Yeah. Every month you think you're going to get pregnant, you literally go through the 5 stages of grief every month. Now throw a miscarriage on top of that, it's heightened. So I guess, honestly, if you know somebody is going through it, hug them. How you doing? You want to go grab lunch? Invite them. Don't be offended if we don't attend birthday parties or baby showers, things like that. Yeah. It's hard. We go in ebbs and flows. There's times we're doing awesome and we're okay and we'll talk about it. And then there's next time we want to stay in our bed and not get out. It's a very up and down situation. So I think my biggest advice is just dodge any recommendations or advice. Do not solicit advice.
Totally. That's really great advice. I've never felt compelled to give advice, but I think sometimes you have those, like I said, like if you're physically pregnant, then I've walked away feeling like, oh crap, I shouldn't have said that. And I don't know.
It's okay.
It's
gonna happen.
Right. And I shouldn't say like, oh God, like I'm just so ready to be done being pregnant. Right. I think I made a comment like that once. And I don't think, again, like, the bigger problem is, no, I mean, of course not. But I can see the trite advice being really, really hard to stomach. So I really struggled with nursing. Not even at all on the same level, but all I want to say is that my body seemed to refuse to do the thing that everybody told me my body was made to do.
Right, so natural. That's a natural thing that's supposed to happen, follow too.
Right, and so infertility, I would imagine, is one of those things. There's a lot of shame because it feels like your body's not doing.
You're failing. You're
created
a woman.
to do. Right.
You were created to do babies and it's not happening.
Right.
And it's hard. And then once you do become pregnant, oh man, there's so much that follows with that too. The worry and not being able to enjoy it. And
I think that accompanies a lot of us when we have typical pregnancies, right? And just to compound it with the fact that and especially if you've invested money. I mean, this is such an important thing for you to be doing. That statistic of 61% don't tell their
61.
friends. And what I really hope is that by you coming on the show, the incredible work you're doing with Everlasting Hope. And by the way, for everybody listening, all of the links to everything you're doing will be in the show notes. So we'll make sure people can find you. But I hope we can get that number drastically reduced.
Absolutely.
Because seriously, it's the stigma around it that makes it so much harder. And then it creates that isolation and makes something already brutally difficult so much worse.
Yes.
So
and
much
I think
worse.
If we would just share and open up earlier on, it would eliminate a lot of the comments and things to follow. But just be straight up with your work. Once again, they can't discriminate against you, Yeah.
I think that's great advice too. Because I'm sure that's a fear for a lot of people.
Definitely, it is. Or that you're going to lose your ranking in your job or something because of this. And it's like people don't, when they go through cancer, they don't when they have high blood pressure, diabetes, insert whatever disease. This is no different. So just to be more kind and gentle if you are an employer, when they do come forward, with this is a big thing. If they're opening up to you about this, it's huge and it's hard and they have struggled with how they're going to do it before they come to you. And even just as a family member or sister, it's hard. My sister just told me she's pregnant again and I had a hard time with that. And I have a 2-year-old. So it doesn't, I think for those that have been through it to know that it's okay if it hasn't left you. I don't know if it ever will. It gets a little lighter, but there's always, it's like trauma and triggers and all of that go along with it. You never know. You have no idea when it's going to hit you, when it's going to happen. And it's okay just to sit with it, feel it, acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. And she did it so gracefully and she was so kind about it and it was awesome and that it was different than the first time. And so just to give yourself some grace, I think no matter what stage you're in of infertility, whether you've not done treatment, and Everlasting Hope supports anybody no matter what kind of treatment they are doing. Like maybe you're adopting. Maybe you're doing natural family planning. Maybe you are working with a reproductive doctor or a naturopathic doctor. We are all things. And in fact, we have resources for anything like that on our website. Our goal is to bring North Dakota providers, patients, resources all in one area. So no matter what community you live in, you know who serves you. Or if they serve the entire state and surrounding area, that will be noted on our website. And so we just want to bring all of that together from all avenues, financial, mental health. We have a huge resource section that we're continually working on growing, and just to have that available for patients.
It's amazing. Your work is amazing. I want to thank you for your time. The last question I try to ask every person, and I mean, this feels a little out of step with our whole conversation, and yet I don't think it is, because we have touched on a bit of the facts surrounding your experience going through this in rural community versus being in a bigger city, where I just think some of the resources are more readily accessible.
Yes.
And
Definitely.
I think the burden on the experience is different too. So when you think about this idea of living big in a small town, what does that look like to you? Was never going to return, and now that's where she lives, because I get that. So what does it look like to you, Tara?
So I think living big in a rural town means don't let where you live restrict you from what you are passionate about, what you have purpose for. You can do all of that and then some living in your rural town. I think, it's easy to get caught up on that little detail. Well, I live here. Don't let where you live stop you, whether it's driving to that appointment, or starting that nonprofit. Big step, big ask, but get involved, do what brings you joy, and you will be surprised how living in a rural town can actually help you and be a benefit to all of that.
Oh, amen. Amen. Well, thank you again, seriously, so much, and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk Show. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe on Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the easier it will be for other small town friends to find us. We encourage you to keep on living big in your small town, because the size of your life is not determined by your zip code.